Hi, my name is Clearly, and this is a walkthrough of Muru from Sunwell Plateau. Much to my surprise, I received a tremendous amount of feedback from a large number of European raiders, specifically a bunch of Germans, who enjoyed my videos a lot but found that I speak too quickly for non-English speakers to understand. In hopes of living up to my name, unlike my poor boyfriend who falls somewhat short of living up to his, I shall aim to speak more slowly from now on. Before I start, I'd also like to clarify that I changed guilds during the time that I gathered Fraps files for this video. While I originally learned the fight with Death Monkey, my kill Fraps is with Deathwish, my new home, so there will be footage from attempts with both guilds. As usual, let's talk about group setup. You need 4 tanks for the fight, one of which must be a prot paladin. Truthfully, prot warriors are ideal for the other 3 slots, but a feral druid can perform adequately as well. Your best cured warrior, aka your main tank, should be assigned to tanking void sentinels, and your prot paladin is assigned to tanking void spawns. Your prot paladin should be wearing as much BT shadow resist gear as he can while still keeping his other stats up. Your other 2 tanks are side tanks. These roles will be clarified further, but keep them in mind for the time being. Phase 2 of Muru is the ultimate in DPS check technology. Brutalis looks like a giant vagina by comparison, so the idea is to bring as few healers to the fight as humanly possible. Deathwish brings 6, a Holy Paladin, 2 Priests, a Resto Druid, and 2 Resto Shamans. Assign your Shamans to chain heal off of your side tanks, and assign each of the other healers to a tank. The rest of your slots, of course, are DPS, but there are somewhat specific requirements for what their allocation is. You need at least 3 Warlocks, and you want 2 Mages, but no more than 2 if you can help it. Bring as many Shadow Priests as you can. 2 is a bare minimum, but 3 is ideal. The remainder of your DPS should be melee, but a Hunter or 2 is acceptable. Ensure that all of your group setups are min-maxed, because DPS and healing requirements for the fight are so strict that everyone's performance must be optimized. Try to bring 2 DPS Shamans, too, whether they're enhancement or elemental, for the extra bloodlusts. The nice thing about Muru is that it's the most predictable encounter in the entire instance. There are 4 roles your raid's DPS will be assigned to. There is a near-side DPS group, a far-side DPS group, a Muru single-target group, and the Void Sentinel group. Side DPS groups should be composed entirely of melee. Your Void Sentinel group should consist of 3 Warlocks, and your Muru group will consist of all of the ranged not assigned to another group. If your Warlocks are having difficulty downing Sentinels in time, add a Shadow Priest to their role, which will help significantly by not only providing extra DPS, but boosting the Warlock's DPS as well. Let's pretend that this giant asshole in the middle of your screen is Muru. This is the door down here. Position your near group on the near side, obviously, and the far group on the far side. Put your Warlocks on the far side. If you're using 2 warrior tanks, put 1 mage on each side. If you have a feral tank, put both of the mages on the warrior's side. Spread your healers out as you see fit, but make certain that there's a group healer for each side. Ensure that as many people are getting totems and auras as possible when you're assigning people to their positions, and try to keep the sides as balanced as possible so as not to overwhelm your group healers. The vast majority of the fight consists of DPSing adds. Muru himself doesn't have a whole ton of HP. But even more exciting, he also doesn't have any aggro mechanics and doesn't need to be tanked. Your raid will run in on the initial pull. I recommend mounting up to get in there as quickly as you can, and everyone should blow their short DPS cooldowns and trinkets to try and burn through as much of his HP as possible before their adds begin spawning. 30 seconds in, the first wave of adds will spawn. Each wave of side adds will consist of 2 Berserkers and 1 Fury Mage. If you're encountering difficulty with your side tanks dying, you can assign a mage to each side to poly one of the Berserkers. The mage should spell steal the buff off of the Fury Mages called Spell Fury. The Spell Fury buff lets all of your casts be instant, so have a field day spamming instant Pyroblasts. The order of your DPS targets on the side should be contingent upon which tank you have on that side. If you have a warrior tank, you should DPS the Berserkers first and do the Fury Mage last. Conversely, if you have a feral druid tanking on your side, you should burn down the Fury Mage first and the Berserkers last. This is because warriors can spell reflect the Fury Mage's casts, which do a lot of damage. You have 30 seconds to kill all 3 adds before the next wave spawns. Your Warlocks and your main tank will be assigned to handling Void Sentinels. There are 6 possible spawn points for the Sentinels, located here, 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 and here. Before each spawn, Muru will open up a large black portal, which will be up for about 5 seconds before the Sentinel spawns. Your tank should run to the portal as quickly as possible to pick up the Sentinel. The location of the first Sentinel spawn will determine which side you tank Sentinels and spawns on for the remainder of the fight. Try to tank the Sentinels either here or here, depending on which side they spawn on initially, at max range from your DPSers. This is because the adds that spawn when the Sentinels die have an incredibly nasty Shadow Bolt volley. Your Warlocks should continue DPSing Muru until your tank has a reasonable threat lead. Aim for over 7k. At this point, the Warlocks will switch to the Sentinel and DPS him down. When the sentinel dies, your prop paladin should be right there to consecrate and begin tanking the void spawns. At this point, another sentinel should be spawning, and your sentinel tank should pick him up and drag him over to where the prop paladin is tanking the void spawns, which is where the first sentinel was tanked. Warlocks kill the sentinel, and upon death he spawns another pack of void spawns, also to be picked up by the prop paladin. At this point, the warlocks immediately begin seeding all of the spawns until they are dead. AoE phases only occur after every other void sentinel. If you happen to kill a sentinel early, throw a couple of shadow bolts at Muru while your tank is grabbing the next sentinel. Nickel and dime DPS on Muru will make a huge difference. Also bear in mind when you're handing out curse assignments that you only need COR on Muru for the first 30 seconds of the fight, and on Entropius during Phase 2. Keep COE up full time, but everyone else can COD Muru without fear, at least until he's at 20% or so, at which point you should stop so as not to transition the fight too early. At this point, I feel it's worth mentioning Darkness. Darkness isn't a problem for anyone but your Void Sentinel tank, but it is the reason that you don't have any melee assigned to solely DPSing Muru. On a timer, Muru will cast Darkness, which turns the floor in the center of the room black. It is a void zone. If you stand in it, it will do ticks of 3k damage and place a debuff on you that reduces healing received by 100%. No one should get hit by it, but it's worth mentioning because your Sentinel tank may have to get creative with dragging Sentinels from one side to the other at times, either by waiting to drag them until darkness is over, or in some unfortunate circumstances, by dragging the Sentinel over one of your raid groups. This is short of ideal because the Void Sentinels have a small range AoE pulse that does 4k damage to anyone in their vicinity. Aside from that, your remaining DPS, which should basically be your Shadow Priests and perhaps an extra Hunter or Caster and sometimes your Mages if they're on a side that has adequate DPS, will be working on whittling away at Muru. Your Shadow Priests will have an additional role, dispelling Dark Fiends. I cannot emphasize enough how important this is, and I can almost guarantee that you'll have at least a couple wipes due to bad dispels. The Dark Fiends will spawn on a timer, and they have to be mass dispelled the instant they spawn. If one of them makes it to the edge of the inner circle, your raid instantly wipes. I would strongly recommend assigning not one but 2 priests to mass dispelling every group of Dark Fiends, because a single resist can wipe your raid. That's pretty much the entirety of Phase 1. Dispel Dark Fiends, kill adds, and kill Muru as quickly as you can. When Muru dies, Phase 2 begins. It's very important that you time precisely the moment at which you transition to Phase 2. You want to have the Void Sentinel you're working on almost dead, and at least one of each set of side group adds dead before you can transition, because your Sentinel tank is going to have to run and grab Entropius the second he spawns. This is a lot like timing the transition into Phase 3 of Vaj when you don't want to have 2 Striders and 2 Nagas up at the same time, but it's more difficult because you have to be timing precisely when something dies. When Phase 2 begins, your Sentinel should die almost immediately as your Sentinel tank picks up Entropius. Unlike his whim-chimey counterpart from Phase 1, Entropius does have a threat table, so absolutely do not begin DPSing him immediately. Everyone should instead focus on killing off all the adds still remaining from Phase 1, again, just like the Vosh fight. Have all of your Warlocks enslave one of the remaining Void spawns and sick them on Entropius, as they do a healthy amount of damage and won't break your demonic sacrifice. After everything is dead, burn Entropius as hard as you can. Blow your bloodlusts immediately when DPS switches to Entropius, and use haste pots, destro pots, trinkets, overpowered racial abilities, and any tools you have available to you to kill him as quickly as you can. During Phase 2, Entropius does not cast Darkness, but he does spawn Void Zones on the ground, as well as random Dark Fiends, which will appear scattered throughout the room. It is the duty of your Shadow Priests and your DPS Shamans to run around purging and dispelling them as quickly as possible, because again, if they reach anyone in your raid will wipe. Your main tank will kite Entropius around the room, along the outer circle, avoiding Void Zones and Dark Fiends, and your raid must similarly avoid these obstacles while burning him as quickly as you can. Everyone in your raid will be taking tremendous amounts of damage, and it might not be a bad call to bloodlust your healers so that they have a prayer of keeping up. Entropius has a soft end rage at approximately 90 seconds, at which point the damage to your raid group will become overwhelming and you will die. And that's the fight. It truthfully is not a tremendously complicated fight, all things considered, but much like communism, explaining it effectively and actually executing it effectively are 2 entirely different stories. The good news is that it only gets better from here. In my humble opinion, Kill Jaden is a significantly easier fight than Muru. Good luck.